All right. Hey, welcome back to the Arts Department, everyone, and the next episode of the DL on Arts. It's the sometimes occasional, when we have the time, podcast with Daniel Landerman and I, and it's basically just a discussion about arts. The ongoing discussion from our last recording was about staying true to yourself and your vision, your art, and your drive. So, without further ado, let's get started.
There's a level of finish, a level of expertise that people are attracted to, right? Mm-hmm. And the only way to achieve that is to, no, I don't want to say the only way, but one way to achieve that is to continue to smash your head against a growth mindset.
Yeah.
To continue to think, how do I better myself in a way that has broad appeal, not just personal appeal.
Yeah.
And how do I get to the point where I'm getting that same kind of feedback on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah.
So that it really does beg the question, though, is what is the purpose of all of that? What's the push, right? So you want to
paint boobies.
You want to paint the boobies?
No.
But here's the thing. If that is what you want to paint, paint it.
It's fine. It's fine. And,
right?
And the funny thing is, like, we've all been in the fucking art history classes, right? Where I don't want to say some dumb professor, because they're not. It's just that I feel like in a lot of ways, they're like people who love art but can't do art. Right?
How many people are closing their browser windows now?
No, I mean, and here's my justification for that, okay? No one is ever going to understand the motivation behind a painting better than an artist.
Yeah.
Right? So, unless an artist has literally written down that I placed this on the left side as a hint at my political leanings, and I did this over here because it represents blah. Unless they actually said that, for us to just be like, oh, well, the candle was over here as a, portrayal of, blah, blah, blah. So to assume that stuff gets a little murky, in my opinion. Sometimes.
Well, do you think that was more? And this goes back to the art thing, the fine art thing. Mm-hmm. Do you think that was more prevalent in past artists? Meaning they were using allegory and all of these visual representations to convey those things to the people that were illiterate, right?
No, and there were things. I think there was symbolism from those different past eras that did actually mean those things. Right. But, and all of this is to say, when you look at a lot of those classical paintings and you see, Bouguereau painting, Venus or the dawn or the night, his different times of day and stuff. And no one questions these nude women floating in the air with this drapery that's hardly even covering anything, right? And at the end of the day, as painters, I'm pretty sure we know why he painted them that way. And it wasn't necessarily like there's any number of ways he could have represented that.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like it just comes down. He just wanted to paint boba,
Yeah.
We love painting skin.
Right.
There's nothing like skin because of its translucency and the shift in colors and
the scattering.
Yeah, the way that light plays within it. There's just nothing else like skin to paint. Everything else is has it doesn't have the mystery that skin does, even though we know what's happening, we know what's happening underneath. There's most of the time, like, say if you were to paint a translucent window, people aren't going to be like, oh, look how much life is in that window. You know what I mean? It's an inanimate object,
right.
And so, when we're talking about the different effects and all the stuff that the skin kind of results in, and it's all like this portrayal of life that we're trying to capture.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, and I just feel like as artists at our core, and this goes like, I don't care what gender the artist is, what gender they identify with, most artists, they love painting beautiful women.
Yeah.
Even the women artists I know, they prefer painting women to painting men.
Yeah. I will say it feels rare to find somebody that strictly wants to draw and paint men.
Yeah.
So,
for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I mean, I know my reasons. I think women are just more beautiful.
Yeah.
And they are. They in a strict aesthetic sense, right? There's just a general kind of like softer, more flowing.
Yeah.
Kind of.
I mean,
and we love flow in art.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't disagree, but I do think that there are things about men's bodies that, like, when you get into the dudes that are like models that are super svelte and they clearly put in a lot of work, you're like, wow, look at the way this shape moves into that shape, and you can really see the way the human body works, right?
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
when you can see that on a male and a female, it's equally appealing, I think. And to put that into art, in either male or female, it's just beautiful, right? Clearly, I don't paint dudes.
Which one do you prefer?
Sorry, folks, can't see the walls, but
no, I just think when you look at let's say the portfolio of like Herbert Draper, and late 1800s, early 1900s, and some of his paintings, I'm just like, okay, you can dress this up however you want. I know exactly why I feel like you painted what you wanted to paint, and then you tried to find a title for it that would somehow elevate it to be more than just...
What did you say his name was? Pervert?
Herbert Draper. And granted, like, I love he does really nice, like, very kind of impressionist colors, a lot of color play on the canvas, but like weirdly modern looking women, like women you would expect to see in paintings now, like slim, perfectly kind of fit, and which is fascinating because you didn't see a lot of that in paintings in that era.
Okay.
And like they're women that we would expect to see in like illustration nowadays.
Interesting. Okay.
I mean, I like his paintings, but when you look at all his paintings, you can't can't pretend that his main goal wasn't to just paint nude women.
Right, but he was operating in a time and place.
Yeah, there was no outlet for that kind of a thing.
Right.
So
now we can do that as long as we're not posting it on Instagram.
Right. Right. Twitter is your friend.
Yes, Twatter actually. Twatter gets the job done. When in doubt, Twatter it out.
Oh man.
No, it's it goes back to the conviction thing, right? So he was operating in his society, producing content that he wanted to create, the things he wanted to paint, and trying to get it out there in some way or another, right?
And now, granted, in some cases, like, because I was just thinking, if we're talking that time period, the exact same time period, we have Waterhouse, right?
Yeah.
And you can look at some of his paintings and be like, why does she have one boob hanging out?
Right.
But then we can also look at like, all right, well, he's painting from these mythologies in these cases, and if you look at those cultures, actually, that was a thing. You didn't have to just cover up because it wasn't seen as taboo.
Yeah.
When you look at like the ancient Greek cultures or Egyptian cultures, like,
right,
it was fine. You can even look like on up into, I want to say that early 1900s, maybe it was 1800s, like South India, Sri Lanka, because like you had Mughal rule that came in, with the Muslims and stuff when they came into India, and sort of began to rule and changed a lot of what the Hindus were doing at the time, but a lot of it didn't spread into South India and Sri Lanka.
Okay.
And so on up into what we might see as more modern times, at least more industrial times, it was common for everyone in the South to just go topless.
Because it was hot.
Because it's hot.
Yeah.
It's hot as fuck. And not sexy hot, meaning the weather was very warm. And so it was common.
So it was just
tropical,
right?
Essentially, and so it was common for everyone to just go topless, and it wasn't. But you think of the culture nowadays, there's no way, because there's been so much effect between the Mughal rule, British rule of changing that stuff, and so it's interesting when you look at those cultures, then so you can look at some of the paintings and be like, okay, now we think of it like, why does she have one boob hanging out of her, wrap, know? Well, because culturally it was different and not seen as. So
you're saying it was an accurate cultural representation of the time that they were conveying.
Yeah, of the time period that they were
years later,
right? Which they would know by looking at the artifacts that have been left over, right? Because you can see the art depicted on pottery and in murals, mosaics, or whatever, depending on which.
But what
culture.
if it wasn't like that? What if the artist back there was just like,
some pervy artist back in the day?
I like boobs. I'm gonna put boobs on this urn. No, that culture was. You look at some of the artifacts, and there was actually an exhibit, I want to say, at the Natural History Museum here in Los Angeles, regarding sexuality and sensuality within that culture, and it was very prevalent.
Oh yeah. When you got into the Greek culture, it was
woohoo.
Yeah, which has like kind of still continued when you look at the weird shit that the 1%ers do nowadays, right? Like the weird parties we sometimes hear about that you're like, what the
they did what with who, what? Okay,
with how many?
Have fun. You do you. And everyone else apparently.
So weird.
So that is what is that? How do we draw that back to what we were just talking about?
Do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and look below for all of our social media. Give us a follow. Do all the things you got to do to support the channel, be a part of the communities. That's about it. And back to the discussion.
I think it does tie back to kind of doing what we do with conviction, because it's easy to start questioning, well, why am I doing this? Why, like if you start to overthink some things, you start to run into that, like, why does she have one boob hanging out, and like, especially when we're dealing with any kind of fantasy genre, right? Yeah. Storytelling, whether that's writing or painting, drawing, whatever. It's easy to start to overthink and start to approach it in the context of our modern society and be like, well, but am I just doing this as an excuse to to draw a half-naked elf,
Right.
you know, because like, would she really be just, you know, walking around, you know, with her boba hanging out? And it's like, well, one, if that's what you decide that culture is like, which is okay, because there have been many cultures where that wasn't an issue, because
Right.
they didn't see it as straight up sexual,
Right.
like our modern culture likes to see it.
Right.
You know, they see any kind of nudity like first see it through a sexual lens.
Right.
And so that's why we get entities like Facebook saying,
Right.
you can't show female nipples.
Yeah, I think that's something that I've run into quite a bit in my past. Is the disparity between the artistic mind,
Mm-hmm.
how the artistic mind thinks of nudity, and even I want to say sexuality / sensuality,
Yeah. Yeah.
versus the non-artistic mind.
Yeah.
Not in all cases, but I've run into it quite a bit where people are immediately judgmental of reference materials or objectives, I want to say, right? Like, why are you drawing this? Why are you drawing that?
Yeah.
That clearly you're an overstimulated, sexualized young man who just wants to have sex all the time. Or
Well, yeah.
are these... Yes, but also... No, but are these the things... I mean, these are the things that interest me, but not in a strictly sexual context.
Yeah.
Right?
Like, that's a very different sketchbook.
Yeah, that's my private sketchbook. That one's next to my bed. No, there's the pervasive current culture of everything is sexual, and as an artist, even if it's not sexual, everybody that views it is going to project that.
Yeah.
And I think there is a
And
problem with that.
Not just that, but they also they don't even try to look at it from outside their own culture.
Right.
And beyond that, like, or more, not beyond, actually, more internally, they don't even try and look at it beyond their own personal experiences.
Yeah.
All they see is, I would never do that. You know, so in the case of like, you know, a woman looking at something that I might draw, some will look at it and think, I would never walk around topless. So thus, this makes no sense. It's like, have you been to a European beach? Because that alone, just in the modern day context, outside of your personal culture and outside of your broader culture, this is actually a thing.
Right. Well, that's classic narcissist.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Instagram is the incubator of narcissism.
Yeah.
And like,
Absolutely.
Our delivery media, currently the best outlet for artists, is also the thing that creates these people that have no ability to empathize with what they're looking at.
Yeah.
They can simply tap tap, tap tap, scroll, tap tap, and
I would be curious to know what it would look like if Instagram had like a thumbs down option, like YouTube does. You know, like I wonder. I would be fascinated to see what those demographics would look like on my work. You know, the closest we can get are those people who don't even follow you, but saw your stuff and felt the need to let you know that they disapprove. You know, or the people that follow you, and as soon as you mention NFTs or whatever, and they're like, I'm unfollowing you because you're burning down my planet, or what, you know, and you're like, cool, you just had to let me know. You could have just unfollowed me, but you just really needed everyone to know.
Yeah. Speaking of that,
That you read
smash
a
that
stupid
like button
article.
if you're enjoying this conversation. Get that thumbs up. And if you don't like what we're talking about, feel free to hit the thumbs down button twice even.
Yeah.
They don't know.
But I mean, imagine how much that would affect, because people already are obsessed with getting likes and catering their work to the broader audience, catering to what they think will garner them likes versus chasing what they truly want to do, like whatever their inner voice is, and imagine how much that would just like destroy them.
It would.
I mean,
I would honestly feel bad for people if they introduced a dislike button, because it would. There are so many people. It would just. Yeah. It would destroy their whole world. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Like if they had more dislikes than likes on
I don't think I would wish that on any of them.
No,
I feel like that it already creates enough.
They should do it as like an April Fool's. Just roll it out for
but it doesn't work.
A day.
Keep on trying.
No, it would be awesome if it worked, but it was only there for a day. Like, and they do this whole thing of like, this is a new function that we're rolling out, blah blah blah. But then April 2nd, it just disappears.
Where'd it go? Seems like a lot of work, but that's why we don't own huge multinational, international corporations.
Guinea pig.
It doesn't go over well.
But I don't know. I feel like, once I realized that engagement was actually more important than follower numbers, right? And I think like that changed my mindset as far as what I decide to post. It doesn't change what I do, what I choose to do as art, but it changed what I chose to post, in that I don't post as much like earlier process stuff now, and that is partly the algorithm, and when we're talking to Instagram, because it does recognize more rendered things as posts that it'll push out more.
Interesting.
Than it does from just like a line drawing or something.
I've seen that in my own work, actually. My own posts, rather.
Also, if you do like a carousel post, if you do the first post as like a close-up on the face in the carousel, and then roll it out to the rest of the painting, because it recognizes the face and will push that out more. But it also kind of like made me want to push for a higher level of like technical execution, right? Because going back to what we're talking about with regards to broad appeal, I think that there are different ways to achieve that, and I think people do appreciate technical execution. And obviously, like you see all those posts that go around, someone doing some like 200-hour render to basically just recreate a photograph that most of the time is not even their photograph. And everyone's just like, oh my God, it looks so real. And it's like, okay, that's not that interesting. It's a good,
not interesting to us.
No, I know that the average person
in the skill set that is impressive.
Yeah, sure. And that's really all people are responding to, because you never see comments of like, wow, that was an amazing color palette you chose, or that was like your mark making was, because it's non-existent,
or that was completely unexpected.
And but again, you can look at like a lot of the artists from the Super Annie collective, Kim Jung-ji being the main one, and it's anything but photorealism, right? And but people love it again because that technical prowess, that he has to be able to execute at that level, versus someone like Loish, whose work just has very broad appeal.
Yeah. And then on top of that, she's
good. No, she absolutely,
destroys.
absolutely, and she gets better and better and better. Right. When I think back to when I first found her work, and I was like, okay, they're fun shapes, and I liked it, but now she's so much better.
Yeah.
And I think I wasn't one of her DeviantArt followers. I never spent much time on DeviantArt, but I found her on Instagram. That's where I first saw her work. And I don't know when that was, honestly, 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago. And so just seeing how much she's elevated in that time, And so she's one of those that has both. She has a technical skill, and keeps getting better with that, but also has naturally a very broad appeal to her work.
Well, I think on top of that, she also has catered to the algorithm in a very insightful way. Yeah. Right? And I'm not saying
even
that
before she had over 1 million followers.
But I'm not saying that in a negative context. I'm saying that she recognized how to use the system to build a career.
Good business.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's nothing wrong, especially like I say, if you and I were freelancers, we'd be approaching social media art very differently.
Absolutely.
And that would be part of the business. Right. Would be to figure out, to unlock the secrets of the algorithm. Right. It would be crucial.
The conviction, to bring this back to things, the conviction would be to get as many followers, get as much engagement, and foster as large of a community as possible through those the means available that were necessary to do so. Yeah. And that in this context, Instagram, pardon me, Instagram is the main driver right now for visual art. I don't think there's another game in town that you can get.
In some ways, though, honestly, though, if you talk to a lot of artists who say live off of commissions and things like that, there are a lot of them who still get all their work through Twitter. And partly I think Twitter has the benefit of active links, which is huge.
Right. Yeah.
You can actually link to your projects.
Right. I can link back to you there, and
it's not a whole go into my bio, then go into my link tree, and then find the link that whatever. And so it's not this whole thing where Instagram is just trying to keep you on Instagram. Right. Is trying to even though they have the option where you can open a link and it's still technically opening in the Instagram app. Right. In the stories and stuff. Right. So just roll that out to the posts. They don't have to leave Instagram. Right. It can still open in your app. Yeah. But whatever.
Yeah, speaking of that, links all over the place, folks. They probably popped up on the screen because I'm a great editor. So click on those links. Give likes, follows, all that stuff. Support the artists that are doing stuff with conviction? Question mark. Yeah. So that begs the question: what is your conviction then with this wanting to grow and advance your style currently?
So that's coming from, I think, 3 places really.
Okay, that's it for the discussion. We're going to cut it there, and there's more to come in the next episode, so subscribe, ring the bell. Do what you got to do to be notified next time we post something up. Also, if you're an artist, look around the channel. There's some things that you might find useful, gesture drawing videos and such. And opinions. That's what this channel is all about. Opinions. We all have them. So I'm just spreading mine around because why not? Anyway, that's it from the arts department. Keep drawing. We'll see you next time.